Hey, Cozy Gloves here, and today we're going to be talking about what is contour, what is harmony, and what is voice leading. Now, the title of this course is Harmony 1, and hopefully you've gotten the gist of what harmony is just through the course, but we haven't really definitively answered this question. These words are the names of whole topics and subjects, so we are going to take a broad perspective view of it, and then we're going to dive in each one in individual videos, exploring what it really means. So let's go ahead and answer these. So harmony, I have it right here. Harmony is the chords we choose to work with. It creates a pitch center and function harmony or functional harmony that the listener can use to make sense of the piece. So what the heck do I mean by that? Well, let's say we're running around in C major. You see how that wants to go back to C? So I played C major, F, G, C. I'm using jobs that each of these keys have when I'm working in a key. The tonal center, the pitch center of the key of C major is C. And this creates a bunch of jobs for all the notes around the chord. And now we're working with a scale, and that gives each of the notes in the scale particular jobs. Well, functions, I should say. And so they don't have to do those things, but they generally do. And it is why we say like a piece makes sense. Like, oh yeah, that makes sense that would happen. You're saying that because functional harmony is happening. If we get into atonality and stuff, functional harmony goes away. It gets really weird. So that's like way later class, like harmony 4 and above. So we're not going to worry about that for now. But anyways, that's what harmony is. It's simply creating a tonal center, some sort of a structure in our music that we're going to be using to give the listeners something to make sense of. So harmony, there we go. Voice leading. Okay, now this is connected to harmony. Voice leading is the way we connect our harmonies. It's also called part writing. So you write a piece, right? Okay, well, let's just go through this paragraph real quick, and then we'll talk about it more. Voice leading is the way we connect our harmonies. So, okay, good voice leading allows for melodies to flow and reinforce the harmonic structure. So if we have good voice leading, meaning the notes, like let's say I go from C. Okay, so let's say I'm working in the key of C. So, I've got these notes. So I play a C major chord. And then I say, yes, now I will play a F major chord. And so I chose a root position triad. Root position to root position. And then I go back to C. Well, that sounds kind of clunky. I mean, it's not the greatest thing in the world. So I say instead, well, what are the inversions of F major? Well, I notice if I move, I have this as F major. I also have this as F major. It's second inversion. So the C's in the bass, the fifth. So instead of playing this, I could go like this. I could get C major root position, F major second inversion, and then back to C major. Saying harmonic analysis while you're playing the piano at the same time is interesting. So that is, I think most people would agree, that's a much stronger, we would call it a voicing. So that is, we have led the voices. Instead of having all the voices do these leaps, which is usually frowned upon, we have voices moving in stepwise motion. The fifth is stepping up, and the third of our previous chord is also stepping up. And we have reached a new chord. And so we have now led our voices. So that is voice leading. And this is an enormous topic. We'll be talking about it all the time. There's all sorts of interesting guidelines and pretty much rules when you're starting out, because we're going to be writing strict harmony, and then we will be, moving away from it as we go. That's like what jazz sort of is, let's move away as far as we can and still make sense of stuff. And it's really, really cool if you know what you're doing. So, okay. Voice leading is also called part writing. And so you might be going, well, why does that have a different name? But it pretty much means the same thing. Well, part writing, let's say you've got four, the strings. Let's just say you've got some strings, a string, you have a violin, a viola, a cello, and a bass. And so they can only play one note. I mean, with some exceptions, but we're ignoring the fact that they can do things like doubling. So I'm pretty sure it's what it's called. It's been a while. So anyways, they each play one note, and we have to choose what note they're going to play and what member of the chord they're going to get. And so we are again going to be giving each one note, but we're going to be writing our next note to get to our next chord like we did here. Maybe one plays C, one plays E, one plays G, and another C somewhere. And then we want to go to here. We've got to choose which members of the ensemble will do that, so on and so forth. I should have used flutes, a flute choir. You know, got a piccolo, a flute, an alto flute, and a bass flute, or something like that. Okay, so that's voice leading. Bum-ba-da-bum-ba-doom-ba-dum. All right, now let's go over to contour. Contour is how we say shape in music. So contour, good contour involves music that changes direction in interesting ways. We will be looking at contour more a little bit later on, so I'm not going to stretch it too much. But basically, you see how there's a general shape. We go down and up. If we were to draw a line through our notes here, we would have an interesting contour. And this one also has an interesting contour. Contours that are not interesting are things like scales. They just go or something like that, you know? That's like up, down. Wow, so interesting. So not as great. We expect other things to make up for it if we have a boring contour. Usually sound design and things of that nature in production value can often take up the space that contour may leave available for the listener to pay attention to. So anyway, that's contour. It's just the shape of music. Melody. Okay, so this is one of those things we're going to define better later on, but right now, melody to us is just a musical idea. We should already be pretty comfortable with at least coming up with something, because we've done tons of exercises where I just say, just write something, come up with something. We'll learn methods to melodic construction. The way I've seen it taught is they just choose members of the chord and then they just write variations from the chord. That's the way it works out in 4-part writing a lot of the time. But if you're just going crazy, it's helpful to have just an intuition about the scale. So we'll be talking about that. But melody, a musical idea. Our aim is to make melodies that are singable. And our goal is to make melodies that we could hand to a choir and they can sing it, and it's not terribly difficult for them to sing. It shouldn't even be hard. It should be something they can do. So singable melodies are our goal. Those are the ones that are catchy anyways. Melodic writing is a focus of counterpoint. I felt like I should mention this here. So we have counterpoint, and that is a subject we will study later on, but their whole shebang is melodic writing. That's like the thing. Melodic writing, part writing, and how you make two independent or multiple independent lines come together to imply a harmonic structure, yet maintain individual melodies at the same time. There's a way to do it. We're actually going to have a light structure of counterpoint in our lessons from here on. And so when certain guidelines and things come up, you will see it again in counterpoint, except for it'll be, in counterpoint. So things will be a lot more rigid and academic, but also, in my opinion, we're just way more creative, because some bounds encourage creativity. So counterpoint is one of those things that I think does that very well. I misspelled single here. I meant single. Whatever. The single melodic line is often the first chapter in most counterpoint books. And so some counterpoint books start with other stuff, but generally it's the first, just a single melodic line. So maybe you just go look up a counterpoint book and read the first chapter. Usually they're free on Google, right? The first chapter is. Here we will only discuss very basics, such as guidelines. Guidelines, basically to us, the rules, but they're really guidelines because it's music, it's art. And going to become a little stricter to avoid unrealistic writing. Again, we want it to have singable things. We want to be realistic here. Unrealistic stuff is uncool. So we say, okay, rhythms. Rhythms should be simple. Well, unrealistic stuff could be cool under the right context, but for now, to us, it's uncool. So we say rhythms. So I have some rules here. So we're going to avoid some unrealistic writing, and these are basic guidelines. They're also outlined in tonal harmony. A lot of books will outline things of this nature to just restrict writing to a reasonable thing. And also for the beginner, it's often helpful to have a structure. So our guidelines are a rhythm should be simple, i.e. things should stay on the beat. You shouldn't have syncopations quite yet. I have had syncopations in the past and gotten a little crazy and had some fun with it. But for our examples, we should really stay on the beat. And so that's it. And oh yeah, things should start on strong beats and end on strong beats generally. So for example, if we're in 4/4, beats 1 and 3 are strong, beats 2 and 4 are weak. We should not have melodies ending on beat 4. That's not okay. Later on, we'll learn all sorts of cool things about how to use this. But for now, keep things on the strong beats, keep our melody simple. A general guideline is our longest note is, our shortest note will be the length of a beat. So if we're in 4/4, the shortest note you should generally see for right now is a quarter note. Later on, we'll quickly add eighth notes and 16th notes to this. This isn't a super strict one we're going to stay to for very long. But for now, let's just keep it a little bit under wraps. Our harmonies should also be simple. And what does that mean? It says it right here. No notes outside of our chords for now should exist in any part. So if I'm playing an A minor chord, A, C, E are the notes you can pick, and that is it. There are no other notes that are acceptable. Those are the notes. That's just laying that down. We will learn all sorts of nifty ways to move around this and melodic tools that allow us to manipulate this. And when they come up, this rule will leave our domain. But for now, that's what we're doing. And then finally, 3 are contours. So remember, contour, the shape of our melody, I idealize, I got a little fancy here. We'll idealize being conjunct. So what does conjunct mean? It means stepwise. Oh, I even say that right there. So right now, leaps are frowned upon for now. We will focus on a single focal point melodies. So let's just a sec before I move on to that next sentence. So conjunct, stepwise, meaning, your melodies should do something like this. Now, I am okay with like leaps to like a third. So if you're going to go, I'm pretty much okay with that for now. But we are mostly conjunct. Leaps up to a fourth are okay, really. But we'll talk more about leaps and sort of the rules. I even have it labeled over here. And then our contours. Okay, so focal points. What the heck is a focal point? That is the highest note in your melody. So if I go like this, that's a bad melody. I've got 2 focal points. That makes the direction a little more ambiguous, because where's the climax of my melody? It's like a story that's got 2 climaxes. It diminishes by the fact that there being 2. It brings the peak to peak value of your story down, and because now it's like there's 2. Now there's not like a big whoa, that moment. It's not there anymore. So in melodies, it's really, really important to us. So we generally do not want 2 highest notes. We just call highest notes focal points because we're fancy music theory nerds. So if we're going to go like, something like that, fine. We had 1 highest note. It was an A. So, okay, cool. Vocal points, melodies, meaning there should only be 1 highest note. In counterpoint, you will learn many other ways to creating melodies. But for now, this is what we're going to work with. There's actually like 9 standard ways, or 11. I can't remember. I have it written down somewhere. But there's a whole list of ways to create melodies. For now, we're going to stick with conjunct. Compound melodies are really cool too. Yeah, just so you know, there's other things out there. This is just, we're starting out a brand new subject. Okay, so let's look at some examples. So here are some melodic examples. So you see, I am now writing down harmonic structure underneath because we need to know what chords are so we know if this melody is inside the chord. So for example, let's spend our time on this one. So this one, if we draw a line through this melody, it's a pretty interesting shape. It's like a little worm type deal. So this is cool. That's an interesting melody. So okay, good conjunct. We have 1 leap, which we will talk about. There are leaps that are acceptable. We've already sort of mentioned it a little bit. Our melody starts on a strong beat, beat 1, and ends on a strong beat, beat 3, and all the notes are in the chords we selected. So for example, I am working in C major, which is just implied by the fact that this is the 1 chord, and I'm on it. I start with a C. So C is obviously in C major. A B is in G major, which is the 5, C again. I stay on the 1 and I do a leap to the 3rd, which would be an E. The 2 chord which would be D minor. So there we go. The 5 chord. So D, another B, and then another C. So we are safe there. easy peasy. Just I wanted to break that one down. Rather, I did it pretty quickly, but you see that the chords all have corresponding notes. None of the notes are outside of any of the chords. Okay, moving on. So this one is bad. Why is it bad? It looks like it's okay, but look at this. We end on a weak beat. So let's listen to that. And so we just end on a weak beat. That's bad for now. You might be going, this sounds fine, but for now, ends on a weak beat. Not cool, man. And now let's listen to this one. You see how much more final that one sounds? So we're also sort of writing to sound done. We'll talk about writing to not sound like we've finished our song later. So, okay, cool. Melody ends on a weak beat. All right, so if we come up here, bad, we have 2 focal points. Look at this. There's an F here and another F here. How uncool is that? Check it out. It's like, okay, that was cool. This could be cool. There could be reasons to do this. But for now, it's like, where's our focal point? This lacks clear direction. So let's go ahead. Let's just make this a G for now. What the heck? See the difference. See how now we had a leap, and this would be a 5, and this would jump down to a D, which would actually be, that would be pushing it. But there you have it. That melody obviously had a more powerful direction than this one that has sort of this ambiguous 2 focal point deal going on. Let us move on. Okay, so here, now this one's harder to see. If you're not good with your keys and scales, these are going to be painful ones for you. But this one is bad because on beat 4, I've got notes that are outside the chords. So if we look at this, on beat 4, I choose an F. But we see that 1 continues, right? It's 1 still here. And F does not exist in the 1 chord. So this is now bad. Okay. And then we say, if we come over here, a 1 chord in C does not have an F in it. And then over here we have a 2 chord. And I've got a G. And the 2 chord is D minor, which is DFA. There's no G in this chord. So this is also bad. Not good. Whenever I turn in assignments for harmony, I'm always a little amazed at like how good the instructors have to be at this, because I'm sure stuff like this slips by them because there's just too many papers. I mean, could you imagine grading like 50 of these with every student came up with their own deal? Like, that's got to be crazy. And some of them probably chose weird keys, like, I don't know, like F sharp major for fun. They're just like, yeah, let's give the instructor. If I was the instructor, I'd be like, you're all writing in D major, and that's the way life is. They do that too, but sometimes they're just like, go crazy. It's like, okay. All right, so now that we've seen some examples, let's talk about these leap things, right? Okay, so we have these 3 things about leaps. We have augmented intervals are to be avoided, as well as 7th intervals and anything larger than an octave. So if it's an octave or bigger, not cool. If it's augmented, uncool. 7ths, uncool. Don't do any of those things. So these are just like, you just got to kind of keep these in mind. These are when people say there's so much to worry about when you're writing 4 parts, this is the beginning of this laundry list of things that you just sort of have to be aware of. So for now, a lot of these things, again, will become acceptable under circumstances, and so we'll talk about those. Diminished intervals are only permissible, like that, permissible, that's right, permissible if used right after the leap, and the melody changes direction stepwise. So what the heck does this mean? A diminished interval. So let's say we're going from a diminished 5th, so that would be an F sharp to a C, right? And so let's say I have a melody that goes, if I went down, I'd actually have to go up. My keyboard doesn't have a note below that. So let's go, if I went down, not cool for now. What we need to do is we need to change directions stepwise. So we'd actually have to go up. So it would sound like this. Something like that. That's okay. So that's what we would expect to happen. We have this little turning point there. Anything larger than a perfect 4th should normally be approached and left in the opposite direction of the leap. So this is why I was like kind of the small leaps, the large leaps. So there's a point where I just demonstrated. Now that's just with diminished intervals. That's sort of a special case. But if we go, let's say, okay, we've got a perfect fourth, we can continue in the direction we are going if it is smaller than a perfect fourth. So if I'm moving along here and I say I want to jump to a B, well, that's a third, so I can do that. And I even encouraged a tendency tone. So double whammy. Whoa, man. Now, let's say I want to jump to a D. Well, let's look at this. Well, D to a G to a D going down is a fourth. So I'm okay. I can continue my direction. Okay, so that's cool. What if I wanted to go, though, from C, and then from this E, I wanted to jump to the B? Well, that's a fifth, and so I would need to go down now because I've exceeded a perfect fourth. So the alternative would be this, right? I go E. I would go C, D, E, and then I would jump to the B, and I could resolve up. Now that one worked out because it's a tendency tone, but generally we want to go down. So what if I jumped to if I jump to a D, that'd be a seventh. We're not allowing sevenths for now. Let's say I jump to the C. Now I would be expected to change direction because I'm past a perfect fourth. So I just want to make this really clear because a lot of students, they just get overwhelmed here. So there are a couple examples, and we're going to look at ones that I made for this. And then if you're using small leaps consecutively, you've got a bunch of tiny leaps under a perfect fourth or below, then you are expected to outline a triad. So if I go like this, those small leaps outline the triad of F major. These small leaps outline the triad of C major. So it needs to outline a triad. If they don't outline a triad, then we've got a problem. So, okay. Now let's look at some examples. So you see I labeled here a triad outline. We have consecutive small leaps followed by, the rest of our melody. However, please note, this is a boring contour. It goes up, it goes down. That's it. So it'd be more interesting if I had a note that went down and then back up and went down one more time or whatever. I also I'm using pedal markings for this because I couldn't find brackets. So yeah. So the outlines a triad, perfectly okay, implies a harmonic structure within a melody. Kind of a cool side note. Let's look at another one. So here I've got some more stuff going on. Now I didn't write out all my harmonic structure. We are solely looking at these relationships here. So don't worry about the fact that there's no chord structure below it. We only want to make sure things are okay with this stuff. Now over here, I have a diminished fifth leap, resolving stepwise in the other direction. So this is the case up here. So when we get there, pay attention to that. So you see that leap was totally cool. What if we kept going up? Whatever, let's do a small leap there. So you might be going, that's okay, that sounds okay, but for now, we are frowning upon this. But just to show you an example of something else. Also, this is a single leap, so I don't need to worry about outlining a triad. So the small leaps outlining a triad are when we do consecutive small leaps. There are totally people out there who are going to confuse that. So I've cleared the air. All right, so let's go leaps over a perfect fourth. So this is definitely over a perfect fourth, right? A to E. And we say, so we are leaving in the opposite direction of the leap. So we jump and then go down. That sounds pretty cool. So there you go. And we have actually another leap. And then we move conjunct here. We're stepwise, so I don't need to worry about outlining a triad right here. Okay. So now we can talk about tendency tones. We've actually already talked about these a bit, but these are tones that generally pull to another tone. So there are tones that have some sort of relationship where they pull to another tone. It's like if you were to stick a group of people that are family members in the room, the the sons and daughters are much more likely to hug the parents first before they hug actually, they're probably more likely to hug the grandparents first before they hug the parents. And they're not as likely to hug cousins right away. Cousins would hug their parents or their grandparents first. So there are these tendencies and relationships that go on. You could sort of look at a group of notes as a bunch of family members who would they hug first? The 7 would always hug the 8 first. It's just the way life is. Well, almost always. Unless 8 did something to really piss 7 off. So here's an example. So there's just sort of an analogy for you. An example of tendency tones would be the 7-to-1 relationship, or I could say 7-to-8 because the 1 is also the 8. The 7 of a major scale and many others will have a tendency to pull to the first degree of the scale. So if I were to just play this for you. Whoops, my bad. But you see, we got up to here. And I say, see, it doesn't feel done. So let's go ahead and make it feel done by putting the 1 there. This is like the most classic example you'll ever see of this relationship. So this is like super simple class A example of this. So let's talk about other ones. So these tendency tones, sometimes called active steps. We talked about these before. They're active because they want to go somewhere. They're not happy with where they're at. They're a big deal in counterpoint. So they're like how counterpoint counters the point. So, okay. Generally, the 2 wants to go to the 3. So if we're on a step 2, we want to go to the 3. The 4 wants to go to the 3. So what does that tell us? The 3 is a resting point. It's like a check. It's like a save point in music. So we've got 2 and 4. They both want to go to the 3. The 6 and the 7 want to go to the, the 6 wants to go to the 5. The 4 can sometimes pull up to the 5, but generally the 6, especially descending, will go to the 5. The 7 will go to the 1. So 7 pulls to 1. We've already talked about that. But if we're on 6, so let me play a scale. We can go back to the 5. But if we are going back down, let's say. That sounds very like realized. So we went from 6 to 5. And so that's an example of the 6 to 5 relationship. Generally, descending is very where this relationship happens more. And then we have the 7 to 1. We've talked about this quite a bit with the minor mode. So, okay. These are just a couple examples. There are many others, but they're often context specific. So these are ones that happen just often, but there are tons of these. And when you put them in context and you like begin to analyze music, why things work the way they do. So here is the 2 pulling to the 3 as we go up the scale. So, I mean, just there you go. Here, so if we go up. Okay, so here's the 4. So let me point it out, I guess. Here's the re and mi. Do, re, mi. It wants to go to mi. Do, re, mi. If I get like fa, mi. That one pulls pretty okay too. Do, re, mi, fa, mi. Whatever. So you can experiment with it. Solfege, really, if you learn how to sight sing, I'm currently like studying specifically that. So you begin these relationships, I don't know, they become like more personal. Like you can really see, it's really a different view. I didn't expect to get this much out of it. It's one of the more valuable subjects I think about now. So, okay, 4 pulling to the 5. So we're in C. Wait a sec. Where's the 4 to 5? Oh, okay. So we have an F and there's no 5. And so it's not gonna sound quite as done. It's like that did not sound done. So if we add the 5 in, we will have resolved that active step. So there's an example of that. Let's look at 4 pulling to the 3. So here we have a 4 and it wants to go to the 3, but there's no 3 there. I've robbed the 3. And so yeah. It's like, oh, that did not sound done. But if we put the 3 in, it'll sound done. So there you have that. And then, of course, we have the 6 pulling to the 5. And so the 6 would be an A. So there's the A. We're going down. So it's really going to want to go to the 5, but there's no 5 there. So this will not sound done, but we'll hear the active step. It's like, oh, what the heck? Everyone is like, that note should be there. Well, unless you're weird. You're like, that sounds much more done. If I made it a half note, it sound even more done. So, okay. So those are just examples of active steps. We're going to begin to look at these specifically, examine these. Being able to pull these off the top of your head will be very helpful for you as we analyze and write music, especially as you write music. Like writing melodies is based around these relationships. Okay. So note, while we are starting very simply, please know that much more complex melodies can nearly always be reduced to simple reductions. What does that mean? Well, a lot of you guys want to write these crazy pieces of music, right? And I'm going to show you how to do that. What you do is you start off with something simple like this, and then we're going to use a bunch of tools I'm going to show you as we progress through actually, this is mostly a harmony 2 thing. But as you go through harmony 2, you'll begin to see all these melodic like neighbor tones and passing tones and all these things that allow you to make cool melodies, those crazy ones like dun 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 something insane that can be reduced. That melody can be reduced to something as simple as just quarter notes, maybe even half notes. You can nearly always take something crazy and reduce it to something very simple. It's actually got a name. It's called the piano reduction. So we reduce something crazy to a piano reduction of the piece. Technically, a piano reduction is when you take like something that was for like an orchestra or some other ensemble and you reduce it to just for the piano, and then the amount of reducing you do is determined. But oftentimes, piano reductions are also used in this regard as well. So you can almost always reduce things to simpler examples. So we say, okay, thing of all versions. Oh, okay, I meant think. That was a typo. I'm like thing. Okay. Think of all versions of Amazing Graces. I was typing fast, okay? Give me a break. This should be capital. Think of all the versions of Amazing Grace that you have heard, from the most flamboyant to the plain and simple versions. The versions where it's just a single singer out there singing Amazing Grace, to the enormous orchestral rendition. And so these things can be reduced. We can go from this crazy rendition of it to the simple one. So there's a relationship. There's a transitional element in the middle that, as we learn these tools, this transitional part of making something simple into something grand and orchestral will become more clear to you. Knowing how to form a strong base will allow us to create much more well-structured and complex melodies later. So that's basically what I just said. So anyways, that's this lesson. We're going to do some exercises, but we've gotten the basic of melodic writing. We've got the basics of contour, harmony, and voice leading. And this, of course, will be available for download in the description so that you can review this material if you'd like to have a copy of this. And so, yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. Support me on Patreon. I deeply appreciate it. It allows me to continue to push and do things like this. And have a blessed day.